It's been a hot minute, dude.
It has been a hot minute.
Yeah.
It's good to be back.
We have some fun updates about the show. We mentioned when we went off air for a hiatus that when we come back, we're going to have some different things going on, new updates, all that kind of fun stuff. And here they are for you before we dive into our show today. 1, you will not be getting 1 episode of the Roundtable per week. No. You will be getting 2. 2 episodes. 1 will primarily be like the movie news based kind of show that we do for the front half of our usual episodes, and then the other episode, which will air probably on Wednesdays or Thursdays. Last minute, still figuring out when that will post. But when that show posts, it will mostly be about one timeless topic that we can just kind of go back and forth on until we feel like stopping.
Yep.
So it'll be more of a fun actual roundtable discussion that way. Also, if you are an audio-only listener, thank you for listening on the audio. And your time that you get the episodes will not change. It'll be 3 a.m. Eastern and noon, or not noon, but midnight Pacific time. However, if you subscribe to us on YouTube and you watch the video version, you'll be getting that version a whole, I think, 5 or 6 hours early. I didn't do the math before I said it. But at 9:30 Eastern time on Monday nights for the Tuesday episode, the video version of the podcast will release, and then the audio will happen at 3 a.m. Eastern on that Tuesday. And whatever day we decide to post the second episode, same thing. It will be posted, the video version, the night before. So look forward to that. That's going to be a lot of fun, and it'll help us come watch us on YouTube. And if you're on YouTube but you miss us, you can always catch us on audio later. Oh, and you might notice it looks a little bare around me. I forecasted at the end of last year that we'd be getting a new studio, and we are in about 2 to 3 weeks. So you will eventually see a new studio and see that studio grow as we get moved in there. I'm excited. Top movies of 2023.
Yes.
This is a video I've been wanting to make for a really fucking long time. And
It's been a year.
It has been a year, and you know the Oscar videos are coming soon. And those are my fucking favorite videos to make. I love making the Oscar videos. Thank you guys for being here. Here's how it's going to work. Nicholas is going to do his list from 10 to 1. He can throw in a couple honorable mentions as well. And then I will do my list, and then we'll have a fun discussion at the end. Also, just to let everyone know, because I like to brag about myself because I'm not a very good person, I saw 101 movies this year. So when
new releases.
New releases, let me clarify. 101 2023 movies in 2023. And when I pulled all of them to make my top 10 list, I pulled 38 movies. So there's a lot that had to get left off. I did make a top 25 list, but I put that on my Letterboxd, and you can find a link to that top 25 in the description of this video. Nick will put a link to his Letterboxd in there as well, so you can see it. With that down, Nicholas, give us your list and give us your honorable mentions, sir.
Yes, but also right off the top, I do want to preface that there are some movies that I did not get a chance to see that I have seen on numerous other lists. So don't come at me for not having watched them. Don't come at me for them not being on the list. Those include things like the new Netflix Society of the Snow, Anatomy of a Fall, Godzilla -1, Poor Things, and Iron Claw. I'm picking those specifically because I have seen that on many a list.
Yes.
In terms of honorable mentions, there are a few. I would say these are probably, out of my top 10, this is probably 11 to 15 range. American Fiction, I really enjoyed. Air, David Fincher's The Killer, and fuck it, let's throw in An Asteroid City because I like Wes Anderson.
Nice.
But with that being down, are you ready for my
Dude,
top 10?
fucking give it to me.
Coming in at number 10 is Emerald Fennell's Saltburn, starring Barry Keoghan and Jacob Elordi, right?
Yes.
That's his name? Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. I really enjoyed it. I know there's been a lot of discourse online about it. I don't think it's very subtle in its commentary. I think that there's a really stupid reveal that's not a reveal, which should have just been removed from the movie, but it was very stylistic. I had a lot of fun watching it, and that's why it's in my top 10. Number 9 was actually a late entry. I watched this just last week, and that is Are You There, God? It's Me, Margaret.
I'm so happy you watched it.
What a delight.
Yeah.
You know, that was just a delightful movie.
It was a late watch for me, too.
It was a very late watch. Rachel McAdams is as charming as always. A great performance by the actress who played Ant-Man's daughter in Ant-Man 2. I cannot think of her name off the top of my head. Kathy Bates, even the Safdie brother there. He did good, but just a wonderful coming-of-age story that I was crying at the end, and I'm like, why am I crying about this? I'm not a little girl who's experienced this. And then number 8, one that might be, I think we're gonna have a disagree with on its placement, is Christopher Nolan's Oppenheimer. Uh, Great movie. I love the whole Barbenheimer memes and stuff that happened this year. Really love the direction. I really hope that he's actually a top contender for Best Director this year. I think that it's long overdue. However, I do feel like that's probably like it's about time award more than
here's your award for all the work that you've done.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I think he's had better directed movies. And I think just the length and the time, I was engaged with it the whole time, but just the balancing act of everything about it. Some things worked, some things didn't work. I think strong performances and the ensemble itself was handled very well.
I'll never be upset about you saying a movie I enjoy is in your top 10. I don't care where it is. Don't worry, buddy. Don't worry.
Number 7, we have the other side of the Barbenheimer coin in Barbie. Just a movie that surpassed any expectation that I had for a Barbie
for real
movie as a whole. I think that Greta Gerwig is a great director. I think her and Noah Baumbach, her partner and also her writing partner, put together something that I think was more just shocked that got approved to be made by Mattel. Because at the end of the day, this is a corporate movie. And the fact that they had that freedom to it, and also Ryan Gosling just giving one of the best comedic performances I've ever seen, just had a great time with it. It hit a bunch of emotional notes, comedic notes, just all around. It was a great time.
Oh, yeah.
Coming in at number 6 is another movie that hit all the emotional notes, and that's Past Lives. This one's typically, I would say, not a type of movie that I find myself really leaning toward a lot. I am basic. I like my action. I like my comedy, and the occasional drama here and there. But this one just is an emotionally devastating movie, and great performances by the entire cast, and the fact that it is Celine Song's debut is just immediately solidifying her as like someone to definitely like
keep on your radar.
Keep on your radar. Yeah. Definitely see the next thing she puts out. If it's anything like this, we're gonna be in for a treat.
And briefly going to what you said about just like, it's not your typical cup of tea, a movie like this. I've always been a maintainer of, if it's good, it's good.
100%.
And people should always kind of look for movies outside of the scope of what they think they would enjoy. Like, I'm not a particularly fond anime person, but I try to watch as many as I can, because sometimes they just blow me away, movies like Your Name. Like, and sometimes I'm not as big a fan as other people, but like, you should always look for things, because if it's good, it's good.
A good movie transcends your expectations of it, and even if it's something you don't typically gravitate toward, you could not like rom-coms. When you watch a good rom-com, though, you acknowledge that's a good rom-com.
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
Speaking of anime, though, my number 5, we're in the 5s now, is The Boy and the Heron, the new Studio Ghibli movie. Just blown away by the animation in it. I thought the story was very touching. I connected a lot with it. I thought the voiceover work, we saw the subbed version, so it was the original cast. I thought they all did a great job. I am very excited to watch the dub, though, just hearing Robert Pattinson's voice of the Heron. And I really have not seen that many Studio Ghibli movies. I think this is actually my 3rd. I've seen Spirited Away and Howl's Moving Castle, all of which I really enjoyed. Also not being typically a big anime person, but I mean, they are the best in the business, or definitely up there with, they're the, not the gold standard, I guess.
Yeah.
With it, and this being his last movie allegedly until the next one.
Yeah.
It's like Liam Neeson with action movies. This is my last action movie.
And then he makes another.
Until that next one, yeah. Now, coming in at number 4, we do have something in my wheelhouse, and that's a nice action movie, and that's John Wick Chapter 4.
Hell yeah.
My God, what a movie.
Dudes rock.
Dudes rock the movie. I've always been a huge fan of that franchise, but just literally from the word go, my jaw was on the floor with the action filmmaking that was on display in this movie. It is probably one of the best American action movies that I've seen. And just the fact that they've been able to scale up this little, like, the first one had, like, no budget, and they're like, oh, yeah, let's go see the Keanu Reeves action movie. Yeah. I'm sure that'll be good.
Dude, people forget where his career was when that first one came out, dude.
No, it was not. He was not as big of a name as it was kind of like Iron Man with Robert Downey Jr. Yeah. It's like...
He was on the downfall.
Exactly. Yeah, like the first one has like no budget, and I think Chad Stokes is a great action director. I'm very excited for his Highlander remake with Henry Cavill.
Yes.
And just made me excited, and just all the influences of all the great action movies and action stars, and the love that just went into it, and it really goes to show what happens when you're actually doing practical stunt work and taking the time to develop the stunts and the action, how that all flows together. Also, just has some of the best side characters in the business. We are in the top 3 now.
Bring us home.
All right. My number 3 is The Holdovers. You had saw the movie well before me, and I didn't get a chance to catch it in theaters, unfortunately. I did end up renting it. Just a great movie. It's a feel-good. I mean, you don't feel good for parts of it, but the end you just sort of feel very fulfilled with what the story promised and where the characters are being set up to. You know, we love a lovable curmudgeon.
Yes.
It's great to see Paul Giamatti, who's always been a great actor, maybe not in the best of movies at times, but to sort of get this recognition that he needs.
Yeah.
A strong debut from the guy who plays the kid in the movie.
Yeah.
And a fantastic turn by Divine
Joy Randolph. Yeah,
who
brilliant.
is definitely going to be in awards.
Yes.
I think she's already won quite a few.
She's won a few of them,
point.
yeah.
Yeah. And just overall, just a great, definitely going to be in the holiday rotation, I think, for me, for coming years. Number 2 is Martin Scorsese's Killer of the Flower Moon. What a great year for long-ass movies, though. Can we just say that? Like, you know, sometimes when you get a long movie, you're like, I don't know about this, but like between Oppenheimer, Killers of the Flower Moon, I was engaged with all of these. I was not familiar with the story. I'd never read the book, the Osage Murders. But you know, it's great to see Martin Scorsese coming back, reminding us that he's one of the greatest directors to do it, and just everything surrounding it, and the care and attention that went into the representation of the Osage people, where you have all these consultants and everything speaking very highly of Martin Scorsese's work on it. And again, with their touching sentiments of it should have been an Osage story, it should have been the Osage people, but it's great to see this getting into the mainstream. People are learning about this. And has a very interesting ending, which I was unsure of when I watched it, and the more it sat with me, just the more I realized how much I enjoyed the movie, which is even more of a hurdle because I don't really like DiCaprio.
Which is
and this is my number 2
me in the years of our friendship.
But let me tell you though, speaking of Martin Scorsese reminding us that he can do it, so did Robert De Niro.
Dude, one of the best performances he's given in a long time.
And it's crazy that he's at the point where he can do About My Father.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then Killers of the Flower Moon, and it's just like, no, just a wonderful story. And Lily Gladstone's performance, like, I think,
dude, to me she stole the movie.
I think she's the clear winner for the Oscar, unless like
you got to see Poor Things.
I do have to see Poor Things. It's. But I think it'll definitely come to her and Emma Stone.
Oh, she's in contention for sure.
I mean, she's definitely the nomination.
1,000%.
Yeah.
1,000%.
And then my number 1. Are you ready here? Yeah. Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse.
Hell yeah.
Because why not? No, I mean, I loved the first Spider-Verse movie. You know, no one was really expecting much from it, especially with Sony's track record with Spider-Man movies, even though they have made the best and also the worst Spider-Man movies. Sony's universe of Spider-Man characters non-excluded. And just the way they were able to take that concept, scale it up in a way that felt organic and not like overbearing as well, and great villain. And what a year for Jason Schwartzman. He had the lead of Wes Anderson's Asteroid City. Yeah. He was in the new Hunger Games movie, voicing Spot, which I assume he'll be back for the sequel.
Oh, yeah.
Or the third movie, sequel to this one.
Mm-hmm.
Just the things they were able to do from an animation standpoint was worth the weight of how long the gap was between all of them, and I'm so excited to see what they do going forward with it, because they have to keep upping that, and filled with tons of fun surprises and Easter eggs, and the emotional story and the arc the characters all go on was just fantastic.
Yeah.
And that is why it is my number 1 of the year.
Yes, hell of a list. Let's give him some applause. Let's give him some applause. Hell of a list, sir. Yes.
Thank you.
Great stuff.
All right.
I will now transition into my top 10 list. As I said at the top of the video, I saw 101 movies, so making a top 10 list was an absolute nightmare. Like I said, the top 25 link is in the description, and I will give a couple of the honorable mentions that were on there really quick. You know, movies like John Wick 4, Poor Things, Godzilla Minus One. You'll find those in that top 25. So if you want to see that list, please click on the description below. But let's dive in to the top 10, Nicholas.
Hit me with it.
My number 10 was a little film called Barbie. Maybe you've heard of it?
I have.
Yeah, just a small indie film that just kind of pipped up on the radar there. That Barbie movie. You know, going to what you said, had no right to be as good as it was, but what were we expecting with Greta Gerwig? And it was such a well-told story in such a beautifully constructed way, in a way that knew exactly what it was when it wanted to be silly, but then knew exactly how to be serious when it needed to be. And the movie has so much emotional resonance with everyone. I mean, there are people who will tell you that this movie is anti one thing or the other. I don't think they watched the same movie that I did, because it clearly is not that. It is a movie for everyone that everyone can love, can enjoy. Barbie's fantastic. It's number 10. My number 9 film, this caused some controversy in the fucking group. My number 9 film is a horror film called Talk to Me. In my group, right, I was practically the only one who loved it. We had a couple of people who thought it was okay. Some people outright hated it. I love this film. I think that it is not only exceptionally well made for being a $4 million movie, not only is it a great directorial debut, I think this is a harrowing story about drug addiction while also being a beautiful story about grief making you do things that are hurting other people and you not being able to look in a mirror and see that happening. And I think the way that this film tells that story is unbelievable. It moves quick. It has a brilliant ending. I love the way the film ends. And they are making Talk to Me. If they don't call it that, I will be upset. But they are making that, and I am really looking forward to going to see it. And I'm glad that A24 can get in the franchise game.
I mean, I was kind of middle of the road on that one, but I think it was definitely one of the stronger horror movies that came out last year.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah. My number 8 film is Past Lives. We share a couple movies on our lists. Going to what you were saying, Past Lives, it's a beautifully told story. It's a very realistic story. And not just in the way of like, oh, this happens to people, but, you know, there are characters in the movie who, if it was any other filmmaker, they would be overreacting to something that's small to create some sort of tension, to try to drive something later. But the reaction, and this on part of the brilliant actors in the film as well, the reaction of the husband character in this movie to what's going on is obviously uncomfortable. But he's a good person, so he's not going to prevent things and cause an unnecessary drama that would have dragged the movie down. Mm-hmm. It lets them continue telling the story that they set out to tell. And I think those perfectly human moments is what really kind of brings this movie home. And yes, it is emotionally devastating. As many, I looked at my list, there are many emotionally devastating movies on here.
It's a sad year for movies.
Yeah,
movies were sad.
Movies were sad. But yeah, Past Lives, beautiful film. Number 7 is Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse. I did think it was a slight improvement over the first film. No knock on the first film. I just think this film is that good. I think that the way that this story not only played out is a relatively longer movie for animation, and it moved quickly. I thought each world having its own animation style was a great choice, and it looked and felt great. The setup that the arc that they've started with Miles in this movie that's going to continue to the next one is a fascinating one for fans of the Spider-Man character, and I'm really looking forward to seeing where it goes. And this movie was, even though it's a part 1, I thought it was an immensely satisfying experience, and I'm very glad that I saw it.
And the fact that they called everything canon events.
Oh my god.
You cannot disturb the canon. I loved
so
it.
Good. So good. My number 6 may surprise some people. My number 6 is a movie called Blackberry. There were a lot of corporate movies this year, where it'd be Air, Flamin' Hot, Blackberry, I'm missing some. Like, there were several. And a lot of people are thinking, like, really? Like, it's going to be that? Guys.
Barbie.
Yeah, well, Barbie. But guys, yeah. I thought the movie was fantastic. Like, not even from... Yes, I'm a big Sonny fan, and Glenn Howerton's in the film, and by the way, he fucking crushes it. Best Supporting Actor is a tough race this year, so he probably won't get in, but if he did, I would not be upset about it.
I don't think he has the juice to win, but he's definitely up there for a nomination.
He's great. But not even just him. The film, the way that it's shot, edited, especially the editing. It's not going to get a Best Editing nomination, which is going to upset me. I think this is one of the best edited films I watched this year. Mm-hmm. The way that this film moves, this movie feels like it's 45 minutes long. Like, when the movie's over, you're like, oh shit. Like, we just watched a whole movie. And it's not in a way where it ends unsatisfactory when it ends. Like, it builds up and it falls. but it moved so, the pacing, that's the word I was looking for. The pacing is so fantastic. You're encapsulated the whole time. And when you're going to make a movie about a story that's so familiar to so many people, you have to make it interesting so it doesn't come across as stale. And this movie is anything but stale. It's immensely satisfying, it's very entertaining, and it's exceptionally well made. Another incredibly low budget film as well. Highly recommend Blackberry. Top 5.
Top 5, here we go.
Number 5 is Killers of the Flower Moon. Another shared one on our list. Yeah. This film is 3.5 hours long. It feels 3.5 hours long, but I don't know what you can remove. And typically, when I think a film is long, I try to offer, like, oh, I think this was a repeated beat. You could have taken that out, or you could have, I think everything you saw needed to be in the story. And I think that's really all you can do when you're telling a story as complex, as deep, as dark as this movie is. And it's just harrowing. It's harrowing, but not only something that Martin Scorsese does better than anyone, the GOAT. He takes characters that most filmmakers would just mark as, this is the villainous character, and so they do bad things, they're bad. And he makes them human. It doesn't excuse their actions. It doesn't say it's not trying to sympathize with them, but it's showing you that it's a fully 3D complex human being, which almost makes the atrocities worse because you're connecting to them as a person. Yeah. And it just brings a whole new level that someone only like Scorsese can do. So Killers of the Flower Moon, it is a watch. You might have to split it up. It's an excellent film. I love it.
What you said, too, just the way Martin Scorsese portrays killing on screen is just so, even when it's, a bad character dying, you're just like, oh.
Yeah. It's rough. My number 4 film is a film that it was one of the last movies I watched in 2023. I was able to catch a screening at a theater in downtown Orlando. It's called Society of the Snow, which is now streaming on Netflix. It tells the familiar story that some people know of the plane of the rugby team in Uruguay that crashed in the Andes Mountains, and it's a tale of survival. This movie's been told before in many different movies, documentaries. This is the best version of this story ever told, in my opinion. If you're going to have a survival story, you have to be able to balance hope, optimism, and then we're all going to die pessimism. The way that it balances those two without feeling like a ping pong of back and forth, and the way that it builds tension and the way that it builds emotion is so exceptionally well done. I think it's 2 hours and 20 minutes. It's not a short movie. And the whole time you are just biting your nails on the edge of your seat like, oh my God, I can't believe people had to go through what these people are going through. I believe it was directed by J.A. Bayona, who directed The Impossible. Okay. And I believe it's going to be, I don't know if it's Spain's. It's a Spanish-speaking movie. I don't know which country's submitting it, but it will be submitted for Best International Feature.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah. Top 3.
Top 3.
My number 3 is The Iron Claw. And I know this is also a film you have not seen. This is a movie that I expected to be good, and I grew up relatively a wrestling fan, so I was aware of the Von Erich family and the tragedy. Seeing it on screen is an entirely different monster. This is the most emotionally devastating movie I've seen this year. But it's not devastating for the sake of being devastating. It's just telling you the story and you experiencing the story and how it's told through Kevin Von Erich, Zac Efron's character's perspective for the most part. And just how someone can go through so much tragedy and how it affects their life and their relationship with a toxic family member. Just how that all shapes up and builds is not only immensely satisfying, there's not a bad performance among the bunch, and most movies would forget about the side characters that are important, but each character gets a finished arc in the movie. Practically every single character that you see in the movie. And I'm kind of waiting for it. I'm watching the movie thinking oh, they're going to forget about the Von Erich mother. Like she's going to fall off. Never does. As soon as you think oh, this character's, we're not going to see much of her, she comes in, has a beautifully emotional scene, and then it keeps going to even where her arc gets wrapped up at the end of the film as well. Everything about this movie was well done. It's devastating without trying to put it in your face, cry, you're going to cry, Yeah. It's just telling you what happened. And watching these events unfold, knowing that it's not going to be good, and with the way the film wraps up is unbelievable. And here's the thing. Zac Efron, I think, might have gotten a little bit too late into campaigning for the Best Actor nomination. He deserves one. He deserves one.
I'm not familiar with the story, so I don't know the tragedy associated with it.
Buddy.
But I saw like a tweet online that someone was like, "It's insane to me that they had to cut out elements of the story because no one would believe
that really happened."
Real.
Yeah. You know the story's sad when you got to change it to make it seem more realistic. Yeah.
Like
it's
that's
insane.
I'm excited to watch it, but also not because if
it's devastating. My number 2 film is Christopher Nolan's Oppenheimer.
There we go.
Christopher Nolan's my favorite filmmaker. Anyone who's watched the channel knows this about me. It was number 1 for a while until I saw my number 1 film. At 3 hours, and I know not everyone has this experience, to me, I was encapsulated from the moment it started to the moment it ended. The way that it deals with kind of the whole Jurassic Park question of we were so caught up with whether we could, we didn't stop to think of whether we should, and realizing it's too late. Like the whole arc with Oppenheimer at the beginning of the movie when he kind of tries to poison somebody but then has a nightmare that someone innocent would get hurt, so he changes his mind, and then realizing far too late that he's just done that to an entire country of people. Like just stuff like that, and the chain reaction question throughout the movie and the definition of that and what that means. And just throughout his whole relationship, and I mentioned it when we reviewed the film, that when I got into the communism, I was like, is this going to, rather agree or disagree, is this going to do that thing where we just go on like a 40-minute tirade about how like communism's bad? And it didn't do that. It was just presenting that as part of his story, as part of Florence Pugh's character, and as part of the trial that was ongoing with him. I thought that the different storylines were interesting. I thought that this was the only way to tell this movie was in this structure. I think if you told the movie linearly, it'd be very boring. I love this film, and I haven't watched it all the way through again, but I turned it on to turn it on in the background as I was cleaning the house a few weeks ago.
Yeah.
And I realized I was not cleaning. I was just watching the movie, and I was like, shit, I have to turn it off because I really had to clean stuff up. So it's just like movies like that don't come around that often. Mm-hmm. And like the score is brilliant. The cinematography is brilliant. Fired on all cylinders for me. Love Christopher Nolan's Oppenheimer. My number 1 film of the year. It's a film that profoundly moved me when I saw it in theaters. Not only emotionally, just in every emotion humans can have, this movie made me feel. And that is The Holdovers. I know a lot of people who work in education, and I think this is a must-watch for people who work in education. It can be any aspect of education. I think it's a must-watch. The way that this story is about family, and about how each person in the film is missing some portion of family and finds people to fill that gap together. And the way it's set at Christmas time, this movie is like the equivalent of a warm hug. Mm-hmm. It feels nice when you're in the world of the movie. I didn't want the movie to end. And it's fascinating, when you make films and stuff, you don't want things to drag. And so you can look at a final runtime and be like, but does it drag? Like, what do I cut out? Like, what do I do? The movie's not short. It's like 2:15. Mm-hmm. I didn't want the movie to stop. The whole time, I'm just like, I can just watch this go on forever. And, the performances, as you mentioned, phenomenal. It really commits to looking like a 70s film, both the way it was shot, how it was shot. It even opens with like the old school logos. And like normally when something does that, I'm like, it's not going to commit to the bit. Oh, it commits.
Opening credits and all.
Big time. I don't know, the world was just so inviting. Everyone was a fully fleshed, fully realized character. And what you learn about each other, down to realizing like, this person's on the same medicine as me. Like that, there's such profoundness throughout this entire film. I've seen it twice now. Mm-hmm. Both times I watched it, it ended and I'm like, yep, that's the best movie I watched this year. When you decide that a movie, I'm going to watch this movie every year at Christmas time, that's a good fucking movie, which I plan on doing with The Holdovers. Mm-hmm. And I highly recommend people seek this movie out. It's a beautiful story, and it's the fact that it's kind of like Past Lives in a way, and that it feels so real, and the people you're watching feel like people in your life, that it almost feels personal throughout everything that goes on. And there's also subtlety to the story that I think is brilliant. This is not going to make sense to you if you haven't seen the movie, but I'm going to say a line that I think is amazing. And it's Paul Giamatti and the kid are walking outside of a store, and Paul Giamatti says, yeah, but Barton boys, they go to Harvard, they go to Yale, and the kid says, but not Curtis Lamb. And Paul Giamatti goes, but not Curtis Lamb. and then they move on. If you've seen the movie, holy shit, it's such a good moment. You don't know what the fuck I just said if you've never seen it. But, guys, unbelievable movie. Love The Holdovers. That's the fucking list, dude.
Yes. And Paul Giamatti has a Bigfoot podcast.
Yes, he does.
And therefore, he is the #1 contender for the Oscar this year in my eyes.
Yes, he has a podcast about Bigfoot, and it's brilliant. Yeah, dude, the Oscar...
What a year.
We're going to get into, like, the Oscar videos. Dude, it's fucking tight. The races are tight as shit. It's going to be terrible.
I feel like the past couple of years, there have been, like, very clear winners where you're like, okay, yeah, this is going to sweep all the technical categories. And this year, everything's just like a toss-up.
Yeah, dude, it's a toss-up. And, like, not since 2019 is it every category. Mm-hmm. Like, typically, there's 1 or 2 categories that are like, this could go either way. It's all of the categories where that could happen. And it
comes down to who ends up actually getting the nominations.
Yes.
Because I feel like for the acting side of thing, there's like 10 people that can be nominated in each category.
Yes, 100%.
It's just like, who gets it?
Yeah, 1,000%, which we're going to dive into.
Oh, 100%.
By the way, the other episode this week, which I'm deciding right now, it's going to be Wednesday night and Thursday morning for the audio. Boom, we did it.
Agreed.
The next episode of the podcast, we're going to be ranking the DCEU. The DCEU came to an end with Aquaman 2, and we are going to rank every project in the DCEU. We're going to have a list for the theatrical editions and the director's cut editions, and see how they place a little bit differently. But don't worry, we'll do it in a way where it's not a 4-hour video. But yeah, I'm looking forward to that. Be looking forward to that. It's coming out soon. We are back.
We are back, and please let us know in the comments your top 10s as well.
We would love to see them.
Absolutely.
And next week, on the episodes next week, we will be back with the movie news and more stuff to talk about in that regard.
Yes.
It will be fun. And, of course, the box office!
The box office.
That's all coming soon. So, good to be back. So, I'm excited.
Me too. Gonna be a good year.
Good to see you.
Good to see you, buddy.
We've seen each other practically every day.
Every day since hiatus.
But they didn't know that, so it's good to see you. Mm-hmm. Thank you guys so much for watching, and we'll see you on the next episode.